Hello everyone, I am the Medic Kirby, and welcome to my channel, the Commander Tavern. The Commander Tavern is a channel dedicated to my favorite Magic the Gathering format. Commander Cube Draft is a mini-series where I'm going to be talking about everything Cube Draft, but related specifically to the Commander format. Throughout this series, I'm going to be explaining the process behind how I brewed my own Commander Cube, as well as pointers on how to build your own. I'll also be reviewing and analyzing many topics and aspects when it comes to building your own cube. In this episode in particular, I'll be discussing how my Commander Cube is finally where I want it to be in terms of drafting, ratio of content, etc. Honestly, now I can call this my masterpiece. So hopefully this video really helps you build your own Commander Cube. If you like any of the cards I'll be mentioning throughout this video, please consider using my TCG Player affiliate link when purchasing those cards. You can find that link down in the description. It'll really help out the channel. But the very best way you can help support the channel is by Patreon. There are plenty of perks for being a patron, such as early access to certain videos, exclusive deck techs, gifts, and more. You can also support my channel for free by simply liking, subscribing, and sharing, which also helps out a lot. I put out a video every Monday, so you don't want to miss out. You can join my Discord server for free if you want to join the Commander Tavern community. All pertinent links are down in the description. Alright, let's get back to the episode. Since this mini-series is meant to show different aspects of drafting a Commander Cube, if you want to see all the topics I've covered so far in it, I suggest you watch the playlist shown here. It already has plenty of episodes covering many other aspects of Commander Cubing. Alright, without further ado, let's continue with this video's topic. Before I begin with how I finally reached the final form of my Commander Cube, I want to first quickly show how it progressed from inception to where it is today. I first started this cube almost 6 years ago as a way to shake things up with my then playgroup. That way, everyone would be building decks from the same pool of cards. This was before Commander Legends and well before me investing anything in the cube apart from what I already owned. I knew the pool was going to be color balanced, and I knew there would needed to be seeded packs, each pack being seeded with an equal amount of monocolored cards, colorless cards, and multicolored cards. However, at first, from the 5 20 card packs drafted, the first one was just potential commanders, the next 3 were cards to build the decks with, and the last pack only had mana fixing lands. While this was successful at first with those who weren't well versed in drafting for a strict deck construction format like Commander, the next time wasn't as enjoyable. Players ended up with too many legendary creatures that couldn't fit into their decks. Then Commander Legends released not long after, providing me with 2 amazing solutions. The first one being that commanders could be seeded in the packs as a fixed quantity, and the second one being the new card, the Prismatic Piper, which guaranteed players would have at least a 2-color identity commander since everyone gets 2 copies at the start of the draft. Now, I didn't need to use an entire pack just to guarantee players draft a potential commander. I can seed each pack with 2 commanders and hand out 2 copies of the Prismatic Piper. So the second stage of my Commander Cube was developed. Of the 5 20 card packs handed out, 4 would contain 2 potential commanders and 18 bulk cards, while the last pack contained only mana fixing lands. And this worked out tremendously well and was the default mode of my drafting my Commander Cube for a couple of years now. Jump to the present, where I was designing some helper cards for the rundown of my Commander Cube when a most joyous idea occurred to me. What if I also seeded the mana fixing lands instead of having an entire pack dedicated to them? The more I tested my Commander Cube, the more subtle kinks have been ironed out. However, one started becoming prevalent. Players who picked commanders with a lower color identity ended up with a lot of mana fixing lands they couldn't include in their decks. Simultaneously, players who picked commanders with a higher color identity had a much easier time building their mana base. It seemed that the wrong type of strategy was being punished. If you pick a higher color identity commander, then you should have a more difficult time building your deck if you didn't draft well, whereas choosing an easier commander to build around should be, well, easier. And thus the latest and possibly best iteration of my Commander Cube took form. Every single pack seeded and built to hand out during drafts would be the same. Thanks to the Potamajig having the exact number of slots for Cube-O-Majigs as my Commander Cube required, I can have all 54 packs be the same. In other words, now every single pack in my Commander Cube is seeded with 2 potential commanders, 3 mana fixing lands, and 15 bulk cards, which are subdivided into 2 of every colorless and monocolored identity card, 1 multicolored card, and 2 random cards that aren't potential commanders or mana fixing lands. Quick parenthesis here, just so we can understand the jargon of my cube, the cards are categorized as being either commanders, mana fixing lands, or bulk, where bulk is referring to any card that is not a potential commander or land used exclusively for color fixing. After testing this latest method out, it was starkly better. I had an inkling that it would be somewhat better, but I didn't expect it to be this good. Not only were players more excited during the draft because they had more access to bulk cards, but players who chose a 2-colored pairing had a much easier time choosing cards, whereas players choosing 3-colored, 4-colored, and 5-colored commanders now had the difficult choice of that bulk card that they really want, or not letting that much needed color fixing land pass them by. It was a resounding success. Now, I know what you're thinking. How is all this seeding accomplished? Interestingly, it's much easier than a cube where every single pack is meant to have complete randomness. For my cube, I shuffle each pile separately. In this case, I have a pile of commanders, mana fixing lands, and one pile of each color identity. I shuffle each pile independently, and then select the required amount from there and prepare the packs. Since the last 2 slots are random bulk cards, once all the ratios are divided, I shuffle the remaining cards and then divide those 2 at a time. In the end, I'm taking 2 commanders, 3 mana fixing lands, 2 colorless, 2 of each monocolor, 1 multicolor, and then 2 of those random bulk cards to create a pack. Here's a sample pack off of Cube Cobra. Now, this is the easy mode for how I seed the packs with my commander cube. In preparation for MagicCon Chicago 2025, I'm going to experiment with an interesting way of seeding my packs. Since I want to highlight the quirkiness of my commander cube, I want each pack to be guaranteed to contain between 2 or 3 cards banned in the format. In order to achieve this, several combinatoric iterations are performed when I'm seeding packs. I separate each pile of potential commanders, mana fixing lands, and each bulk pile of colorless, monocolored, and multicolored into a banned and legal pile, producing now 2 piles per subcategory instead of 1 like before. This graphic shows my sketches in designing how to seed the packs so that the results are still seeded but very much random. For example, you're guaranteed 2 commanders in each pack, and they're still going to be random, as will every other card. However, since each pack can either have 2 or 3 banned cards, it's possible that none, 1, or both commanders are banned. And if they both were, maybe some other card or no other card in the pack is banned. If none of them were banned, then either 2 or 3 of the other cards in the pack are banned. That way, packs are not only seeded to provide the options of commanders and mana fixing lands, but will also showcase the cube's quirkiness. Sort of how sets like Mystery Booster all have 1 slot dedicated to playtest cards, which is a card not legal anywhere else. But I reiterate, you do not have to go this far down the rabbit hole. Simply seeding, like I mentioned before, should be enough variance. And as always, there are absolutely no house rules while drafting, deck construction, or playing. My cube operates with the same rules as Commander Masters, with the specification that Draft Matters effects and Wish effects work because it's still a draft environment. So, any cards like Canal Dredger work as designed, same with Wish. This is another aspect of what has made my Commander Cube so popular amongst those I've drafted it with. But you can see some more in-depth analyses on the inclusions of these kinds of cards in other episodes of this mini-series. I have been tinkering with my cube now for almost 6 years, and it's been incredibly rewarding and satisfying curating it. I love seeing players sweat and have a difficult time deciding what to pick whenever they open or receive packs. The games are also insane. Last year at MagicCon Chicago 2024, I drafted it with the homies from Quest for the Janklord, MTG Baron, and some fans. Everyone built such a crazy deck. MTG Baron in particular built a spicy white-blue deck with Richard Garfield PhD as one of the commanders. With him, he was able to cast 2 different cards as Thoughtlash and Thassa's Oracle, neither of which are in the cube, winning him that game. Speaking of Garfield insanity, here are some lines that are possible with the cards inside of my commander cube. Use Richard Garfield PhD or 4th Stage of Magic design to cast Bernard Ginger Sculptor as Svega, the Unconventional. Svega is obviously not in my commander cube, only achievable via this method. Then you can activate her -X ability with X equal to 0 to cast a copy of Garruk with that mana value, and that just happens to be Garruk the Slayer. Wild, I know, but also incredibly fun, especially when you control a token copy of this abomination. Here's another interesting line with one of my favorite cards in my cube. You can use a clone like Spark Double to copy your Polis the Planeshifter. Then, if you enchant that Spark Double with Infinite Reflection, each non-token creature you control enters the battlefield as a copy of that Spark Double, which is really a non-legendary copy of Polis. This means that you can have as many active planes as non-token creatures entering after this setup. Now that is plane chase. Another line I like is equipping Killer Cosplay to Wasitora Nakoru Queen in order to choose Daragas Shivan Champion as the creature it becomes. Then, at the beginning of your end step, you can conjure a random card from its spellbook face down into exile. Like I said, things get crazy but crazy fun. Especially since you can use cards like these to get access to digitally exclusive cards or even unobtainable cards like Heroes of the Realm promos. All in all, I don't think I'm going to alter the ratios in my cube any further. I do have a plan for when we finally and hopefully get new 4-colored legendary creatures in the Nano Green, Nano White, and Nano Blue color identity, since we only have these 3 as of the making of this video. For some reason, not all black is the one with the most variety, but I want the color identity within the cube to be as balanced as possible. I'm also hoping out for the completion of the Tango lands, layers, and other land cycles as of the making of this video, since they haven't yet been completed. Also, I'm still crossing my fingers for when I can eventually, and hopefully, acquire a copy of Command Mine and Command Power Plant, and maybe even Helena and Elena and Gissa and Geralf, these being playtest cards from the unknown events. But apart from that, the main ratios will remain the same. 108 potential commanders, 122 of each monocolor, 108 colorless cards, 92 multicolored cards, each balanced amongst their respective color identities, and 162 mana fixing lands. That way, each 20 card pack can be seeded with the same ratios amongst them. This might seem like a ton of work, especially since packs are also combinatorially seeded with banned cards, but I'm a mathematician, so cracking the code was still part of the fun for me. If you haven't already and want to take a gander at the current version of my Commander Cube, you can find links to it in the description, where you can see both the online version of my cube as well as the one I curate in real life. I have way more topics to cover in greater detail and depth for this mini-series, so stay tuned. I would like to thank all my patrons for supporting me, and a quick shout out to all my higher tier patrons, the Brewers, for their patronage. I also want to thank everyone using my TCG Player affiliate link. And to everyone, thanks for watching this episode of Commander Cube Draft on the Commander Tavern. I am the Man at Kirby, and happy drafting.